What if I told you that the number one reason most people over 60 lose strength, energy, and independence is not aging itself, but something far more preventable? What if the true culprit behind that slow decline in muscle balance and vitality is a biological process that can be reversed with the right nutrition, movement, and cellular support? You see, many people believe that muscle loss after 60 is inevitable. They think it is just part of getting older. But here is the truth: it is not. Scientists now call this process sarcopenia, and it begins decades earlier than most people realize. Starting as early as our 40s, we lose about 3 to 8% of our muscle mass per decade. After 60, that loss can accelerate dramatically unless we intervene. Now, here is the exciting part. Research in the last few years has revealed that muscle tissue remains incredibly adaptable, even into our 70s and 80s. Your muscle cells can still grow, still repair, and still respond to the right signals, but they need the right environment. And that environment is shaped by three key things: nutrient signaling, inflammation control, and mitochondrial energy. Here is what happens at the cellular level. Every muscle fiber in your body is made up of tiny contractile units that require amino acids, the building blocks of protein, to maintain their structure. As we age, our muscles become resistant to these amino acids. This is called anabolic resistance. In simple terms, your body no longer hears the signal from protein as loudly as it once did. So even if you eat protein, it does not always translate into muscle building. The result is gradual muscle breakdown, slower repair, and more fatigue. But there is good news. You can retrain your body to respond again. You can literally flip that switch back on. And one of the most overlooked tools for doing this lies in what is on your plate specifically, in the kinds of dairy proteins you choose. Here is where the cheese conversation begins. Not all cheeses are created equal. Some types are loaded with sodium, oxidized fats, and compounds that worsen inflammation and disrupt muscle metabolism. But others rich in leucine, bioavailable calcium, and probiotics can actually stimulate muscle protein synthesis and improve gut-derived signaling to your muscles. In this episode, we are going to dive deep into what modern research says about reversing muscle loss after 60, why certain cheeses may accelerate that loss, and which nutrient-dense alternatives can reignite muscle growth and mitochondrial energy production. We will uncover how inflammation, mitochondrial dysfunction, and nutrient absorption all interact to determine how strong or weak your muscles become with age. You will learn how to use food as a signal, not just as fuel, and why the timing, quality, and biochemical composition of your meals matter more than ever after 60. So stay with me, because by the end of this breakdown, you will know exactly which foods to avoid, which to prioritize, and how to build a daily plan that keeps your muscles active, your metabolism firing, and your health span expanding year after year. Most muscle loss after 60 does not start in the gym. It starts in the kitchen, and more specifically, in the bloodstream. The real enemy is not simply a lack of protein or exercise. It is chronic, silent inflammation that erodes muscle tissue from the inside out. Here is what is happening at the cellular level. Every muscle fiber in your body is made up of long, multinucleated cells that respond to mechanical and nutritional signals. When you exercise, you create tiny, controlled microtears in those fibers. Your body repairs those microtears using amino acids, creating stronger, more resilient tissue. But when inflammation is high, that repair process never completes properly. The immune system stays on too long, flooding the tissue with cytokines signaling molecules like tumor necrosis factor alpha and interleukin-6. These compounds suppress the very enzymes that build muscle, and they activate others that break it down. Now, where does that inflammation come from? One of the most overlooked sources is the modern diet, especially the overconsumption of highly processed dairy products. The kind of cheese that sits wrapped in plastic with long ingredient lists and bright orange coloring is not just cheese. It is a mix of oxidized fats, emulsifiers, and advanced glycation end products that accumulate in tissues and trigger oxidative stress. These molecules damage mitochondria, disrupt cellular membranes, and set off inflammatory cascades that directly inhibit muscle repair. A 2021 study published in the journal Nutrients highlighted that older adults who consumed higher levels of processed foods, particularly refined fats and sugars, showed greater markers of systemic inflammation and lower lean muscle mass. The link is clear. Inflammation dulls the anabolic response, the body's ability to use protein to build muscle. Now here is the encouraging part. You can reverse this trend not with supplements first, but with anti-inflammatory nutrition. That means choosing dairy that works for your cells, not against them. Instead of aged or processed cheeses loaded with sodium and saturated fats that have been oxidized by heat, choose fresh, minimally processed options. Cottage cheese, ricotta, and kefir are excellent examples. Let me break this down with a simple example. Think of your muscle as a construction site. Protein is the raw material, the bricks and steel. Inflammation is like acid rain pouring on that site every day. You can bring in all the bricks you want, but if the acid keeps falling, nothing solid will ever stand. The key is to stop the rain before you add more bricks. This is why foods rich in omega-3 fatty acids, antioxidants like vitamin C and E, and polyphenols from plants are so powerful. They quiet down that chronic inflammation and allow your muscles to start rebuilding again. When you pair these with clean protein sources like whey, eggs, or fermented dairy, you amplify that recovery signal dramatically. So, as you look at your daily habits, ask yourself, is your diet building or breaking your muscle tissue? If this breakdown is resonating with you so far, go ahead and press the subscribe button. Drop a quick comment. It helps more people discover this kind of science-backed health content. Because next, we are going to explore the nutrient that flips the muscle-building switch at the molecular level and why most older adults are not getting enough of it. After 60, your body does not respond to protein the same way it did in your 20s or 30s. You could eat the same amount of protein you always have and still lose muscle. Why? Because your cells become anabolically resistant, meaning they stop translating dietary protein into new muscle tissue efficiently. At the cellular level, this resistance is tied to how muscle fibers sense and respond to an amino acid called leucine. Leucine is like a molecular on switch. When leucine enters your bloodstream after a meal, it activates a signaling pathway called mTOR, short for mechanistic target of rapamycin. This pathway tells your muscle cells, it is time to build. Without enough leucine, that signal stays quiet. And without that signal, your muscles continue to shrink, even if your total protein intake seems adequate. Now here is where the story becomes fascinating, and where cheese plays a surprisingly important role. Different cheeses contain very different amino acid profiles and digestion rates. Processed cheeses, the kind that melt perfectly on a burger, have low-quality, heat-damaged proteins that are harder for your body to digest and use. They often contain very little leucine relative to their fat and sodium content. But certain fresh dairy proteins, particularly whey, are extremely rich in leucine and highly bioavailable. That means they are absorbed quickly and effectively trigger mTOR activation. Foods like cottage cheese, ricotta, and Greek yogurt naturally contain this fast-digesting protein matrix, especially when they are made from high-quality milk and not subjected to excessive heating or aging. A 2018 study in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition found that older adults who consumed at least 2.5 grams of leucine per meal maintained significantly higher rates of muscle protein synthesis compared to those consuming less than that threshold. This is now known as the leucine threshold. For most older adults, reaching that means eating about 30 to 40 grams of high-quality protein per meal and choosing sources that deliver leucine efficiently. So how can you apply this? Let me simplify it. If you are over 60 and want to rebuild muscle, think of every meal as an opportunity to hit that leucine switch. Pair a serving of cottage cheese or Greek yogurt with nuts and berries in the morning. Add a portion of clean protein such as salmon, eggs, or lentils at lunch. Finish your day with a light, leucine-rich dinner that includes fresh ricotta or a small whey smoothie. And here is another key detail. Timing matters. After exercise, your muscles are particularly sensitive to leucine. That is the perfect moment to include a rapidly absorbed protein source. A cup of kefir or a scoop of high-quality whey can be enough to re-stimulate muscle synthesis and recovery. Now, let me make this clear. This is not about eating massive amounts of protein. It is about eating smart protein, the kind your cells can actually use. When you combine that with anti-inflammatory foods, you create the perfect biochemical environment for your muscles to grow stronger rather than weaker with age. Here is a simple analogy. Think of leucine as the ignition key in your car. Protein is the fuel. You can fill your tank all day long, but without turning the key, the engine never starts. For muscle growth, leucine is that key. And the right kind of cheese, fresh, unprocessed, and rich in whey or casein can be one of your most powerful tools. In the next section, we will shift focus from protein to power specifically. The mitochondria inside your muscle cells, the engines that convert nutrition into usable energy. Because if those engines are weak or damaged, no amount of protein will build lasting strength. If there is one word that captures the secret to aging well, it is energy. Every heartbeat, every breath, every step, and every contraction of your muscles depends on the same biological currency, adenosine triphosphate, or ATP. The factories that make this energy live inside your cells. They are called mitochondria. Now here is the part most people overlook. As we age, our mitochondria become less efficient and more prone to damage. That means less energy for your muscles and slower recovery after any kind of exertion. But that decline is not inevitable. It is highly responsive to what you eat, how you move, and how you stress your body in the right ways. At the cellular level, mitochondria are not just energy producers. They are also signaling hubs that determine whether your cells grow, repair, or die. When mitochondrial function falters, the result is a drop in muscle power, increased oxidative stress, and a gradual shift from type 2 muscle fibers, the strong, fast twitch ones, to slower, weaker fibers. This transition is one of the major reasons older adults feel less steady, less explosive, and more fatigued. So what causes mitochondrial decline? Chronic inflammation, nutrient deficiencies, and lack of hormetic stress, that is, the right amount of good stress. Mitochondria thrive under moderate challenge. When you expose your body to exercise, heat, or cold, it triggers mitochondrial biogenesis, the creation of new, stronger mitochondria. This is your body's way of saying, I need more power stations. Now let us talk nutrition, because mitochondria are built from nutrients. To function properly, they require magnesium, B vitamins, coenzyme Q10, and omega-3 fatty acids. These act as cofactors in the energy production process, helping enzymes within the mitochondria generate ATP efficiently. Without them, the entire process slows down. Let me break this down with a simple analogy. Imagine your muscle cells as a city powered by thousands of small electric plants, the mitochondria. If those plants are old, undersupplied, and running on poor quality fuel, the city flickers and dims. To bring that city back to life, you do not just pour in more fuel. You repair the plants, upgrade their engines, and improve the quality of the fuel. Here's what that means in practical terms. Eat foods that are rich in magnesium, such as leafy greens, nuts, and seeds. Prioritize fatty fish like salmon or sardines at least 2 to 3 times per week for omega-3 fats, which keep mitochondrial membranes fluid and functional. Include coenzyme Q10 sources like organ meats or supplement if necessary, since natural levels decline with age. And most importantly, engage in regular resistance exercise and short bouts of aerobic training to stimulate mitochondrial growth. A 2019 paper in Cell Metabolism found that older adults who performed high-intensity interval training combined with resistance work showed mitochondrial gene expression patterns nearly identical to much younger individuals. In other words, they rejuvenated their cellular engines through movement. Here is where the right dairy fits back into this story. Whey and fermented dairy products contain small peptides and bioactive compounds that reduce oxidative stress inside mitochondria. Kefir, for example, contains beneficial bacteria that produce short-chain fatty acids like butyrate, which support mitochondrial function and reduce inflammation in muscle tissue. This makes kefir not just a food, but a metabolic signal, a message to your cells to stay young and metabolically active. If you are enjoying this breakdown, consider subscribing. I post weekly deep dives into longevity science and how to apply it to everyday life. If you have ever wondered why some people seem to stay strong and energetic even into their 70s and 80s, while others lose vitality far sooner, one of the answers may not lie in their muscles at all, but in their gut. Inside your digestive tract lives a vast ecosystem of microbes known as the gut microbiome. It contains trillions of bacteria, fungi, and other organisms that influence everything from digestion to immunity, hormone regulation, and even brain function. But what researchers are now discovering is that this community of microbes also communicates directly with your muscles through what is now being called the gut-muscle axis. Here is what is happening at the cellular level. When you eat fiber, polyphenols, and fermented foods, beneficial gut bacteria ferment these compounds into short-chain fatty acids such as butyrate, acetate, and propionate. These molecules travel through your bloodstream and act as metabolic messengers. They reduce systemic inflammation, improve insulin sensitivity, and enhance the availability of amino acids for muscle repair. In other words, your microbiome helps decide how efficiently your body converts food into functional strength. A 2020 study in Frontiers in Physiology found that older adults with a more diverse gut microbiome had significantly greater muscle mass, grip strength, and walking speed than those with lower diversity, even when total protein intake was similar. The takeaway is clear. It is not just what you eat, but how your body processes what you eat, and that begins in the gut. Now, how does this connect to cheese and dairy? Certain fermented dairy products, particularly kefir, yogurt, and cultured cottage cheese, are natural sources of probiotics and bioactive peptides that nourish this microbiome. When you consume them regularly, you introduce beneficial bacteria such as lactobacillus and bifidobacterium, which strengthen the intestinal lining, reduce inflammation, and improve nutrient absorption. Contrast that with processed cheese products, which often contain preservatives, stabilizers, and pasteurized fats that do little for gut health and may actually promote dysbiosis, an imbalance of harmful to beneficial bacteria. That imbalance fuels chronic inflammation, and as we have already discussed, inflammation is the silent destroyer of muscle tissue. Let me illustrate this with a simple analogy. Imagine your gut as the soil of a garden and your muscles as the plants. If the soil is rich, balanced, and full of healthy microbes, the plants thrive effortlessly. But if the soil is stripped, acidic, or contaminated, even the best seeds struggle to grow. Your microbiome is that soil. If you want strong muscles, you must cultivate strong soil. So, what can you do today to strengthen that gut-muscle connection? Begin by incorporating one fermented food per day. That could be a small glass of kefir in the morning, a serving of unsweetened yogurt with fruit, or a spoonful of fermented vegetables like sauerkraut or kimchi. Pair those with prebiotic fibers from foods such as onions, garlic, leeks, asparagus, and oats, which serve as nourishment for the good bacteria. As your gut environment improves, you will notice more than just better digestion. Your energy levels, recovery time, and even cognitive sharpness often improve as well. This is because those beneficial metabolites from your microbiome also support mitochondrial biogenesis, the same process we discussed earlier that rejuvenates your cells' energy factories. If you are finding this helpful, subscribe if you want more deep dives into nutrition and longevity science. Because in the next section, we will uncover how Hormesis, the concept of beneficial stress, can turn simple habits like movement, heat, and cold into powerful triggers for muscle regeneration after 60. Here is a fascinating truth about biology: your body does not grow stronger in comfort. It grows stronger in response to controlled stress. This concept is called hormesis. It refers to the phenomenon where small doses of stress stimulate repair, regeneration, and resilience, while chronic or excessive stress causes damage. Hormesis is nature's way of telling us that discomfort, when applied wisely, is medicine. At the cellular level, hormesis activates pathways that repair DNA, remove damaged proteins, and trigger mitochondrial renewal. When you expose your muscles and your mitochondria to the right kind of challenge, they adapt, becoming stronger, more efficient, and more resistant to aging. Let me give you a few examples of hormetic stressors. Exercise is the most obvious one. Every time you lift weights, walk briskly, or climb stairs, you create tiny amounts of mechanical stress in your muscle fibers. Your body responds by repairing those fibers, building them thicker and more powerful. Resistance training in particular has been shown in dozens of studies to reverse sarcopenia, even in adults in their 80s. A 2019 analysis in Aging Research Reviews concluded that performing just 2 to 3 resistance sessions per week, focusing on major muscle groups, can increase lean muscle mass, improve insulin sensitivity, and reduce inflammation in adults over 60. The key is progression, gradually increasing resistance or duration so that the body continues to adapt. Another powerful hormetic tool is heat exposure, such as time spent in a sauna. Heat stress activates proteins called heat shock proteins, which help refold damaged proteins and prevent muscle breakdown. In Finland, where sauna use is a common practice, studies have linked regular sauna bathing to improved cardiovascular function and lower all-cause mortality. On the opposite side of the temperature spectrum is cold exposure. Cold immersion or even a few minutes of a cool shower stimulates norepinephrine, a neurotransmitter that enhances alertness and reduces inflammation. Cold also encourages mitochondrial biogenesis, improving the efficiency of your energy systems. There is also fasting, another form of hormetic stress. Short, controlled fasting windows trigger a process called autophagy, which is your body's built-in recycling system. It clears out old, dysfunctional mitochondria and replaces them with new, efficient ones. Intermittent fasting, when done correctly and paired with adequate protein intake, can support muscle maintenance while improving metabolic health. Here is the beauty of all this. These stressors work synergistically with good nutrition. When you eat anti-inflammatory, leucine-rich, mitochondria-supporting foods and then apply gentle stress like exercise or heat exposure, your body interprets it as a call to rebuild, not to decay. Think of it like training an orchestra. Each stressor is an instrument. Exercise plays the strings, fasting the percussion, and nutrition the brass. When you coordinate them harmoniously, your body performs a symphony of renewal. So if you are over 60, do not fear stress, embrace the right kind. Take a brisk walk in the morning sun. Lift light weights 3 times a week. Try a short sauna session or a cool rinse afterward. Skip a meal once in a while to engage your repair systems. These are not extreme acts. They are simple messages to your cells that say, stay alive, stay adaptive, stay strong. Before we move on, a quick reminder: if you are enjoying this, press the hype button, like, comment, and subscribe. It really supports the channel and helps spread these tools to more people who want to protect their health span. Because in the next section, we are going to tie everything together: the nutrition, the microbiome, the mitochondria, and the stress response into a daily action plan for muscle longevity that anyone over 60 can start right away. We have covered a great deal of science so far, from inflammation and mitochondria to leucine and the gut-muscle connection. Now it is time to translate all of that into something you can actually do day by day. Because knowledge alone does not build strength. Consistent action does. Let us create a daily rhythm that supports muscle regeneration, stabilizes inflammation, and maintains metabolic vitality after 60. Here is how a single science-backed day might look when you apply these principles. When you wake up, your muscles are in a naturally fasted state. This is the perfect time to activate your metabolism with movement. Begin with 10 to 15 minutes of light activity, a brisk walk, gentle yoga, or mobility work. This wakes up your mitochondria and enhances insulin sensitivity for the meals ahead. After movement, refuel with a leucine-rich breakfast. For example, a bowl of cottage cheese or Greek yogurt with a handful of walnuts and berries. This combination delivers protein, healthy fats, antioxidants, and polyphenols that counter oxidative stress. If you prefer a drink, a whey-based smoothie with spinach and a splash of kefir works beautifully. Around lunchtime, focus on balance: clean protein, fiber, and color. Think grilled salmon with steamed greens and quinoa. If you eat dairy, add a side of ricotta or cultured cottage cheese for extra leucine and probiotics. After lunch, move again, not intense exercise, just motion. A 10-minute walk after eating reduces blood glucose spikes and improves nutrient uptake into muscle cells. Small habits like this make a huge difference in long-term muscle maintenance. Hydration is one of the most overlooked aspects of muscle preservation. Dehydration impairs muscle contraction and recovery. Aim for consistent water intake throughout the day and include magnesium-rich foods like pumpkin seeds or leafy greens. If you are feeling low on energy, take a brief sauna session or practice slow, deep breathing to stimulate parasympathetic recovery and mitochondrial repair. Dinner should be lighter but still contain at least 30 grams of high-quality protein to reach the leucine threshold. Pair lean chicken, eggs, or lentils with vegetables cooked in olive oil and a small serving of fermented dairy like kefir. This supports digestion and overnight muscle repair. If you practice intermittent fasting, Let dinner mark the end of your eating window. That gentle overnight fast will engage autophagy, clearing out damaged mitochondria and priming your system for renewal by morning. Never underestimate the power of sleep for muscle health. During deep sleep, your body releases growth hormone, a major driver of muscle repair. Maintain a consistent bedtime, avoid late-night eating, and keep your room dark and cool. High-quality sleep amplifies everything else you are doing for your health span. Let me simplify all this with one key idea. Structure builds resilience. You do not need perfection. You need rhythm, small daily patterns that signal your body to repair and rebuild. Each choice is a conversation with your biology, and your body listens closely. Now, as we bring this full circle, remember that the goal here is not just muscle preservation. It is functional longevity, the ability to move freely, to stay independent, to live with strength and confidence well into your 70s, 80s, and beyond. Because muscle is not just about appearance. It is your metabolic armor, your glucose buffer, your fall prevention system, and your biological youth indicator.